Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Did She Just Say Sex? I hope you're all good and well and you're doing all right after that abysmal heat wave we had last week in the UK. Because listen, one thing about the heat in the UK, it feels like a furnace. Like it feels like there's a radiator in the sky. 30 degrees, 35, 40 degrees here is not the same as 40 degrees anywhere else. But I hope you've been keeping well ever since the last episode. But before we get into this episode, make sure you're liking and following and subscribing on whatever your chosen listening platform is. We are literally everywhere now, so you guys have no excuse. We're on YouTube, Deezer, Amazon Podcasts, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, literally everywhere. So make sure you're liking, subscribing, commenting on wherever you're listening. And like always, this week we'll get straight into it. I ended last week's episode by talking about how God completely changed the way that I viewed abstinence after experiencing shame that started with abstinence. Because for a long time, I thought abstinence was just about staying away from sex. But God showed me how to actually steward abstinence, and that abstinence is about stewardship. And today we're going to talk about actual stewardship, like how you steward your sexuality and your desire. Because a relationship with God is personal, but there are tangible ways that you can keep yourself chaste. And today we're going to talk about it. So get your notepads, your notes app, or however you make notes. Be ready not to just listen to the tea, but to take in the tea. Before we get into the practical side of abstinence, I think it's important that we're working from the same definition, because I know sometimes in the church we use words and just assume everyone knows what they mean. So what is abstinence? By definition, abstinence is choosing to not engage in sexual activity. So for Christians, that means intentionally choosing to reserve sex for marriage as an act of obedience and worship to God. Now, that is different from celibacy. People tend to use abstinence and celibacy as interchangeable words, but they are not the same. Celibacy is a calling where someone chooses to remain unmarried and abstain from sex altogether. Jesus talks about this, and Paul also talks about this, and it's not something that every Christian is called to, but some people absolutely are. But abstinence, on the other hand, isn't necessarily forever. It's more so a posture of saying, God, I'm choosing to honor your design for sex, and I'm waiting until I'm married. I'm going to steward my sexuality in a way that reflects you. And that's a very important distinction because today's episode is not really about celibacy, it's about abstinence. It's about those of us who desire to be married one day, are dating, engaged, or simply just trying to honor God with this area of our lives. Now, I'm not going to spend loads of time today talking about why God calls us to be abstinent because I want to dedicate a whole episode to that. Today isn't really about the theology behind abstinence, it's more the practical side. So how do we pursue it? How do we steward sexuality, and how do we build boundaries around abstinence that honor God? So if you haven't listened to last week's episode, make sure you do listen because it will contextualize a lot of what I say today. But as a short recap, last week I was talking about shame and conviction and how they're not the same thing. Shame is of the enemy, but conviction is of God. And conviction is the start of a mindset renewal. That's God essentially pulling you for a chat and saying, how can this bring you closer to me? I also spoke about my mindset shift with abstinence and how God revealed to me that abstinence is not just something you do, it's not a rule you follow. Because the problem is, if abstinence is just a rule, then all you have to do is break the rule. God wants us to approach things logistically and seek why we do the what, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So instead of the question being, how do I avoid sex? The question should become, how do I steward my sexuality? Those are two completely different things. One focuses on avoidance and the other focuses on discipleship. And honoring God through your actions and doing actions to try honor God are two separate things. There needs to be a heart shift in your approach, not just something that you do. So today we're going to get into some tangible ways to approach abstinence and break a couple of taboos as it pertains to sex. So firstly, this one might seem a bit strange, but quite literally ask God what your boundaries need to be. Literally ask Him. Remember, a relationship with God is personal. It's not one size fits all, no pun intended. So ask God what your boundaries should be. Don't just follow someone else's boundaries because they're a measure to stay away from sex. Literally ask God. 1 Corinthians 6 verse 18 in the NLT. Whenever I read a Bible verse, just assume I'm reading in NLT because NLT is my translation. I love that one. But the verse reads, run from sexual sin, exclamation mark. No other sin so clearly affects the body as this one does, for sexual immorality is a sin against your own body. So what does this mean? Does it mean literally run? Well, I mean, if you have to, then lace up your boots and get to running. But it doesn't necessarily mean that. This verse is essentially telling us to stay away. And not because it's bad, because like I said, sex is not bad. It's just a flesh gratifier. And God knows it's good. Like, hello, God is aware that sex is good. He knows that once you reach that point of no return, you will not return and you will dive in headfirst. So running away actually means not giving desire the wrongful place to breed. Don't give your desire a chance to grow in spaces it's not meant to. For some people, for example, some people, they don't kiss. Sounds extreme, but let's look at what's underneath that. That's their attempt at not allowing desire to breed. Because some people, like me, once you start kissing, yeah, call my Uber, now. Because if I'm kissing, I'm touching. And if I'm touching, I'm going to get some. So having a no kissing kind of boundary, it's you stopping it before it starts. So for you, you might be all right with kissing. Must be nice. Kissing might not be a sex indicator, but ask God. For me, personally, my specific boundary is no kissing in private spaces. In public, give me that. Give me all of the PDA. Give me that. Sorry, because when it's my time, I will be that couple kissing on the train, kissing on the street, kissing at the restaurant. That's going to be me. And you can hate me for it all you like because I'm going to love it. But in private, behind closed doors, out. Stay away from me. Genuinely stay away from me because I know that is a breeding ground for things to go further. Another boundary, as an example, is some people don't drink together in private spaces because we all know what that liquor do. We all know what that liquor do. On a date night, bring me the nicest Spanish Malbec on the menu. But in private, hello, apple juice, please. Apple, even orange. Even listen, water is fine. Because once liquor is involved, we all know, come on guys, let's not be dumb. When liquor is involved, boundaries become harder to maintain. But at the same time, having boundaries, a big part of having boundaries is your own self-control. Because it's hard to keep boundaries, yes, but you have to be able to know when to say stop. You need to know when to say stop. You have to take ownership of your flesh and say that's enough. Because the boundary is not the point. The point is protecting what God has asked you to steward. Boundaries are secondary to that, but the primary is stewarding something that God has asked you to steward. So if you can't do XYZ because you know XYZ is going to take you there, then don't do XYZ. Leading on from that, another way to protect your abstinence is to stop asking how close you can get. That's how I used to view abstinence. I used to think as long as we're not having sex, everything is okay. And I would push the boundary as far as I could go. And guess what? I would end up having sex because who do I think I am? So we need to be very careful when speaking to God about our boundaries because it can easily become, Lord, what's too far? Because so many Christian conversations nowadays have turned into, can we kiss? Can we have sleepovers? Can we cuddle? Can we do this? Can we do that? And underneath that, the underlying question is, how close can I get to the line? So when you're constantly asking God how close you can get to sin, you've already stopped asking yourself how close you can get to God. I'm going to repeat that because that's a bar. Hello? My pen works. When you're constantly asking how close you can get to sin, you've already stopped asking how close you can get to God. Write that down. Write that down. Because the goal is not how far you can go, it's how I can honor God in this. One question is wisdom, the other is permission. Boundaries are you asking for support, but asking God how far you can go is you saying, what's the maximum temptation I can handle before it's a sin? If you guys can't already tell, I love an analogy. And an analogy that I like to think about with this specific situation is if there is a cliff edge in front of you. Wisdom asks, where should I put the fence? Permission asks, how close can I get to the edge without falling off? Do you see the difference? Wisdom is you saying, okay, where should this fence go? Should I put it maybe like a meter away from the edge so that, I'm still protected, even, if I'm a little close to the edge? Or maybe, this cliff looks stable. It doesn't look like it's going to capsize. I can put the fence a bit further. That's what wisdom is. But permission is saying, okay, cool. If I stand on the tip edge, no pun intended. Sorry. If I stand at the edge, the tip of this cliff, will I fall? Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But that's the difference. So my boundary isn't no kissing in private because kissing is bad and evil. My boundary is no kissing in private because I know me. I know where that road leads. So I'm not creating a boundary around sin. I'm creating a boundary around wisdom. So someone submitted a dilemma and it fits perfectly into what I want to say next. So the dilemma reads, Hi, Lanikai. Firstly, I want to say thank you for this platform. This is truly a godsend. Always praying for you and your ministry and the things you're doing. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. And then it goes on to say, so I'm dating this guy and everything is perfect. He has all the things I want in a guy, but he isn't abstinent. I just started pursuing abstinence, so I'm still learning what that means for me, but he isn't abstinent. What do I do? A part of me feels like this is something we can work through, but another part of me feels like I'd be wasting my time. I don't want us to get in a situation and then I blame him or double down on what I want to keep him. He says he's fine with me being abstinent, but he isn't abstinent. He's a believer. We go to the same church. Aren't they all? You know what? Let me not make this let me not make this that. Okay. He's a believer. We go to the same church and he serves and all of that. So he's a good Christian guy. He just isn't abstinent. Please help. Firstly, thank you. I appreciate you for sending in a dilemma. And I've been seeing all the questions and the dilemmas that you guys have been submitting. And when I said that you guys should be bold, y'all really been bold. So I appreciate you guys. But secondly, I think that this is something that so many Christians go through. I have been through this. I'm currently going through this. So the dilemma isn't really, oh, should I date him? I think the deeper question is, can two people protect a boundary if only one person values it? Think of it like this, and this is how I like to see it. I believe that two people should step into a dynamic consciously abstinent together. I don't think one person should be carrying the entire weight of that boundary. Someone can't be abstinent for you. Do you know what I mean? It can't be that you're doing something and then the person's doing it because you're doing it, because if you weren't around, they wouldn't be doing it. So what are they doing it for? They're doing it for you. And abstinence should be something that they're doing for God. So whether you're in the picture or not, would they still be pursuing abstinence? If the answer is no, then they're not pursuing abstinence. They're pursuing you. Years ago, I was taught this analogy, another analogy. But the analogy is, if you're standing on a chair, it's easier for someone to pull you off that chair than it is for you to pull them up onto the chair. That's just physics. No matter how strong you are, that's not a factor. If you're standing on a chair and you try to lift someone up only with your arms, that's hard. But that same person, if they try to pull you off, you're going to come down, right? So if we apply that metaphorically, it's easier for someone to pull you away from your convictions than it is for you to pull them towards them. And that's why I don't think we should enter relationships hoping that someone will eventually come around to your standard. You can't build a relationship on potential. And that's not just with, listen, that's not just with abstinence, that's with anything. Y'all may call me strict. I'm not going to get into it this episode, but you can't build a relationship on potential. And with this is why it's important to be equally yoked, as it says in 2 Corinthians 6:14. But I don't think people understand what equally yoked actually means. I think Christians, we throw this one around a lot, too much, without actually understanding what it means. Because it doesn't mean you have to be identical. It doesn't mean you have to be abstinent for the same amount of time. And it doesn't even mean that you have to be in the same stage of your faith journey. It just means you're moving in the same direction. You have the desire. You both have the desire for the same things. So if I've been abstinent for 3 years and I meet a guy who's been abstinent for 3 months, I'm not automatically going to write him off. Why? Because we're moving in the same direction. We both want to honor God, we believe in abstinence, and we want to protect the boundary. Yes, timelines are different, but the destination is the same. But if someone isn't interested in abstinence at all, that's different. You should not have to convince someone to pursue something that they believe God is calling them to. Because if they only want to be abstinent because you're there, what happens when you're not? The desire has to exist independently of you. So it's not, is he willing to be abstinent for me? It's, is abstinence something he's already pursuing because he wants to honor God? If not, then what are you guys really doing? Like you said, darling, you don't want to be in a situation where if something happens, you blame him, because that's unfair. It takes two people to tango, even if you didn't initially want to dance. So would I say leave him and keep him as a brother of Christ? Yes. But I will also say, don't take my word as Bible, pray about it. And not pray that don't pray that he will become abstinent so you guys can be together. Pray for the wisdom to know what to do. James 1:5 calls us to ask God for wisdom and he'll give it to us freely. So ask God, ask him and he will give you what you need freely. Knowing what you know, just ask him and he'll tell you. But also trust your gut. It's like you already know what to do, girl. It's like you already know what to do. So I'm not saying throw him away, but I am saying with what you already know, take it to God. But if you wanted me to give you an answer, I would say keep him as a brother of Christ. Keep him as a brother of Christ and pray for him. Not to be abstinent, but pray for him that God opens his eyes to the things of him. And you never know. Keep him as a brother of Christ. You never know. Things might change and you all might end up together. But don't pray with a hope in that happening. Just pray for his soul, pray for his salvation, and pray for him to seek the things of God truly. Ask God to reveal himself to him truly. And now, lastly, my last point is to remember that abstinence is not the goal. Don't treat abstinence like a goal. Remember last week when I told you guys how I was so consumed with shame because I broke my abstinence? It's because it was a goal. It was an idol. Being abstinent for a year or however long I was abstinent, it felt like, wow, I'm putting a timeline on this. I'm making it something that is tangible to achieve, which it is, but that overrode my desire for wanting to do it for God and wanting to do it because I can say, oh, I've been abstinent for XYZ time, If my goal was simply to avoid sex, I'll miss the point. But if the goal is to become more like Christ, then abstinence becomes part of a much bigger journey. The biggest practical tip I can give you is this. Stop building boundaries around your current season. When I wasn't dating, of course, abstinence was easier. A lot of Christians build a system that works while they're single. They start dating and then they realize that that system can't carry the weight of real temptation. That's literally what happened to me. There's a real valuable insight because it's a lived experience. It's not just theory. Abstinence isn't about avoiding sex. It's about stewarding your sexuality. So if I was to summarize what I've spoken about today, these are the steps and tangible ways that you can pursue abstinence and that can help you pursue abstinence through the lens of God. Number 1, ask God what your boundaries need to be. Not a friend's boundaries, not your pastor's boundaries, not a Christian influencer's boundaries, but yours. Because your relationship with God is personal and your boundary might not be the same as someone else's. Number 2, stop asking how close you can get. The goal isn't to see how much temptation you can handle. The goal is to honor God. Ask questions rooted in wisdom, not permission. Like I said, wisdom is you putting a fence by a cliff, but permission is you seeing how close to the cliff you can go before falling. And those are two different things. Number 3, make sure you're moving in the same direction. If you're dating, don't just look at whether someone says they're a Christian. Look at the fruit. Ask whether they're pursuing the same things that you desire. Are you both pursuing God? Are you both pursuing purity? Are you protecting the same boundaries? Because even you can be abstinent and have different boundaries. Again, find yourself to be equally yoked with someone. Are you protecting the same boundaries? Because let's say if you think that you're not necessarily strong enough to be the type of couple that can kiss and cuddle, but you're abstinent and your partner is someone that wants to kiss and wants to cuddle and movies and have sleepovers, but they're also abstinent, that's not equally yoked. Yes, you're abstinent, but that's not equally yoked. So make sure you're moving in the same direction. And number 4, build boundaries for where you're going, not where you are. Don't create a system that only works whilst you're single. Build habits and boundaries that can support you when you're attracted, when you're in intimacy, because temptation can come real without, having boundaries that have longevity. And number 5, remember abstinence is not the goal. Christlikeness is. Abstinence is one way we honor God on the journey, but at the end of the day, abstinence is not just about avoiding sex. It's about stewarding your sexuality. So one more time. Number 1, pens, papers. Number 1, ask God what your boundaries need to be. Number 2, stop asking how close you can get. Number 3, make sure you're moving in the same direction. Number 4, build boundaries for where you're going, not just where you are. And number 5, remember that abstinence is not the goal. Christlikeness is. Okay, that's literally all from me today. I know I've said a lot, and I hope you've been able to soak it all in and you actually hear what I've been saying. And like always, seek God. Speak to Him. Don't use me as your only guideline. I am purely just a vessel. That's all. Make sure you're speaking to God and finding you in Him. As with anything, make sure you take anything back to God. Any word you hear, any prophecy that's spoken over you, any Christian podcast you listen to, always take it back to God. One thing I love doing is after a Sunday message, like during the week, to give myself a chance to like read over Sunday's message, because sometimes we make notes and we never read them again. I like to midweek go over the sermon again, like my notes, but explore it for myself. Because again, God wants us to be inquisitive. I've been saying this. Question things. Don't just listen blindly. Question things and find things out for yourself, because you never know what God can reveal to you in your own research, in your own time with Him. How do you think, podcasters build episodes? How do you think I build episodes? I sit and I research and I spend time talking to God and building these episodes. How do you think pastors create a sermon? They research. They're in their Bible. They're in Google, ChatGPT. They're researching things so that they can, bring forth that message. So always make sure that you are cross-checking things with God. Don't just hear and obey. Cross-check everything with God. Well, thank you for listening to another episode of Did She Just Say Sex? If this conversation resonated with you, make sure you're following the podcast and sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you have questions or dilemmas that you would like to be discussed in future episodes, remember the anonymous form. Anonymous? Why does that word sound weird? Because I'm not saying it correctly. Anonymous. Remember the anonymous forms are linked below. There's a question section, there's a dilemma section. Remember, everything is completely anonymous. Anonymous. Everything is completely anonymous. Why does that word sound weird today? And they will help shape future episodes on this podcast, like today's dilemma. It fit perfectly into what I was talking about. So, we used it for context. So thanks again, guys. And remember, Christians have sex questions too. I love y'all, and I'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Okay, bye.